Thank you. Well, it's my pleasure to contribute to this debate. I think 2026 is going to be a year of accountability. We've heard a number of contributions to debate today. We haven't heard from the government yet, of course. I'm sure they'll speak soon. But what's clear is the opposition doesn't see the government's stated energy transitions plans as realistic. Neither do crossbenchers, and I suspect the government themselves know that to be the case. We had an energy debate at the end of last year too, which I contributed to, and we haven't heard the government respond today, but of course we heard them respond then, and we had a 15-minute contribution from the government speaker which said a lot of things, but what it didn't say is anything about affordability, reducing the cost of energy, or doing anything at all that addressed the cost of living for Western Australians. And it seems it's something, when it comes to the energy discussion, that the Labor Party just doesn't want to talk about. Right? They can put up Instagram reels of windmills and other things that make you feel all warm and cuddly, but when it comes to the serious conversation of talking about affordability, they're a blank space these days, which is a real shame. And I know many West Australians are struggling with the cost of energy and the cost of everything right now. Now, the Honourable Dr. Steve Thomas, in that debate last year, made some predictions. I think we should rename him the Honourable Dr. Nostradamus, because he seems to be correct a lot.
He's got most things wrong.
Well, maybe it should be the minister, but the point I'm making is he's been making predictions and been proven right time and again. I chuckled over I think it was January, when the minister came out and announced more money for coal, because that's exactly what the honourable member said last year, and he's right because he's paying attention. He'll like me saying he's a very smart individual who's across the detail, but at the same time, it's not actually that hard to work these things out because everyone is saying it. Every stakeholder we talk to, anyone with any expertise whatsoever in the energy system, is explaining that what the minister is saying just is not going to work. And I suspect the minister knows that too. So as I said, 2026, the year of accountability. We've had 9 years, it'll be their 10th year in March in government. We're heading into their 10th year of government. There's been a lot being said by this government about energy, but it's time to start being held accountable for things that you were saying that are not true. The other part of this, and the honourable member referred to this in his opening remarks, is when this transition doesn't work, if it's not going to be renewables that fills the gap, it will have to be gas. And the thing to remember about gas is, unless we're producing more supply, that creates a circumstance where demand for gas increases. When you have demand for gas increasing, and if the supply is not keeping pace, it means the price of gas for households increases. So it won't just be their bills, their electricity bills, it'll be their gas bills too. We are in a cost of living crisis in this state, something which Labor doesn't want to talk about anymore when it comes to energy. And this transition plan, if mishandled, and it appears that it is, it's a threat to the costs of gas as well, something, again, that they don't want to talk about. Now, I just want to mention something more on affordability. We had new inflation data released today by the ABS. It gave a start to the end of January 2026. Now, of course, energy is a key driver of inflation. Most things we do, whether it's buying food or driving or buying a product from the store, has energy as an input. And I just want to mention how West Australia is faring in that regard. I've got a graph in my hands. It's from the ABS website, hot off the press this morning. And it shows that inflation to the end of January 2026 annually was 3.8% for Australia. And it breaks out each capital city in Australia. You can see right here, there's Perth, of course, leading the pack. Perth's inflation for the year was 4.9%. And if you compare it to, say, Melbourne, 3.7%. So you look at Melbourne, look at us. Perth is significantly worse, and I'll seek leave to table this at the end of my remarks. So it goes to show that inflation isn't just a national problem that we're just suffering from. Inflation's not some global thing. We can't point the finger at Donald Trump or someone like that. In Western Australia, it is specifically worse. It's almost 40 or 50% worse than in Victoria, for example, as a comparator. And of course, the ABS stats released today has fresh inflation numbers for different groups of goods. So it doesn't have energy specifically laid out, but it does have a range of items, all of which has energy as an input cost. I just want to note, the leading driver of inflation in Perth is housing. For the year to the end of January 2026, housing was up 13.5%. The weighted average of the 8 capital cities for Australia was only 6.8%. So we're not just riding some national trend, this is specifically a Western Australian trend. And after 9 years of Labor, I think in 2026, the year of accountability, they've got to take some accountability for that. They are failing on housing, they're failing on energy, and the stats show it. You can't hide from after 9 years in government. It's very, very clearly linked to the decisions and the performance of this government. Now, I want to specifically talk about Bullsbrook, because I had a fantastic visit to Bullsbrook with the Leader of the Opposition. The Honourable Dr Steve Thomas was there too, and my colleague, Honourable Phil Twiss, joined us. And we met some local businesses. We had a community meeting at a local park with about 80 people came to. And then that evening I had the pleasure of attending the Bullsbrook's Resident Ratepayers Association meeting, and we heard from Western Power directly at that meeting about the significant power issues that are occurring in Bullsbrook. So we've had a lot of engagement on this. And I want to say it's really disappointing the way the government's handled this. The minister's almost dismissed it. She's treating it like an operational matter. But what's clear is, and this is what Western Power briefed on, is that the main reason why power keeps going up, and they had 16 outages in the start of February, we're not even out of February yet, 16 outages, sometimes it was up to 20 hours in a day, is due to vegetation on power lines causing faults. Now, I put it to the government, and it's worth everyone thinking about. Is that some new problem? Did trees just suddenly get invented 5 years ago and start impacting on power lines? I mean, this has always been an issue. Trees have always been an issue. And if you don't have Western Power and the minister focused on this and putting adequate resources in it, you get the disastrous circumstances like we had in Bullsbrook at the start of February, 16 power outages, and the impact on residents in that suburb has been really, really harsh. We certainly heard that when we were there on the ground 2 weeks ago. So during February, I'll just give you some stats. 2,000 households lost power, 900 homes were without electricity for up to 20 hours. And you've got residents that told us they had to empty out the contents of their fridges, had spoiled food after doing a full shop. People are losing wages, work schedules are being interrupted, businesses are being impacted locally. And another family we met when we were there was, of course, the Mackey family, who told us about their quadriplegic son, Cody. They've been forced to spend $20,000 on batteries and backup systems just to keep their house cool. Cody's, due to his medical condition, needs to have stable temperatures, so they've had to make that expense because they just don't trust Western Power and they don't trust this government to keep the lights on. Another resident I have been corresponding with is Blair Jones. Blair sent me an email. I just want to read some of it and then comment on it. So he said, Mr Spagnolo, I just had to buy a generator and ordered a new inverter and 15 kilowatt batteries with blackout protection. There's $15,000 I'm out of pocket because the power in Bullsbrook is unreliable. Will there be any rebates or funding for this, or do we just cop it on the chin? Have had to replace our food multiple times this year alone. I work away and meal prep. Also lost all my work meals. Couldn't even leave Perth at the start of my swing because I had no meals to go away with. There goes another $1,000 in wages I can't get back. It just goes on and on. All we could get out of Western Power was $120. That doesn't even come close to making it up. Not happy. Now that is a story that we heard from hundreds of residents in Bullsbrook, and the lack of urgency from the government on that matter has been really disappointing. Now, of course, finally the Premier has actually written back. There's been a lot of correspondence to him, and what it shows is, of course, the Premier, at least now, is aware of the issue. This is what he said in the letter 2 days ago to a constituent. I'm very sorry to hear about the challenges you and the community have experienced during the recent power outages. I understand that for many residents, losing power also means losing access to water, including for livestock, which is especially difficult during extreme heat. I recommend that these I recognise that these outages place additional financial pressure on households and local businesses, as well as create safety concerns across the community. Later on in the letter, he says, I'm advised that electricity to Bullsbrook is supplied by power lines that run through heavily vegetated areas. This makes the network more vulnerable to equipment faults, pole top fires and impact from birds, animals and vegetation. Additionally, as Western Power applies more sensitive fire mitigation settings during summer, power restoration times can be longer to help reduce the risk that the activity of the reconnection sparks a bushfire. So at least we have confirmation that the Premier himself, according to his letter that was sent to constituents 2 days ago, understands the issue, right? But the thing is, they've already suffered the cost. As I just read out from Blair, there's someone that spent $15,000 plus all the other expenses on trying to address this problem. And the problem was caused, as the Premier's letter confirmed and as Western Power confirmed during their briefing, by vegetation. It's not a new problem. This is one of those things where the government can't even get the basics right. It is a basic KPI for Western Power to ensure that during the hot summer months when there are people depending on power, that vegetation is cut off power lines. And if you can't prioritise basic things like that, then it's no wonder that West Australians are so unhappy right now with the way things are going in this state. It's no wonder that residents in Bullsbrook are so unhappy with their lot in life. And the anger is palpable. I mean, that residents' and ratepayers meeting, the Western Power representative did a really good job explaining and obviously trained for that purpose. He did well in a very hostile room. There were plenty of people that spoke up, but plenty that didn't speak up. And what I did after the meeting is I chatted to quite a number of residents who hadn't said anything in the meeting, and it was pretty clear. Despite the effort put in by Western Power to come to Bullsbrook to explain the issue, they were very, very unhappy with the answers given, and they really felt let down and forgotten by this government. That's really disappointing. But can I just say well done to all the Bullsbrook residents who have fought so hard to get attention to this matter. And we will continue to support you in the Liberal Party, and I have no doubt that if we keep the pressure on, some good outcomes will come along. Now, so that's the situation in Bullsbrook. That's an issue repeated in many parts of the world. But after I went to Bullsbrook, I was getting emails from Chidlow and other parts of the Perth Hills that we know are famous for having pretty dodgy infrastructure. Now, over the summer break, like many of you, I took some time off. I went down to Dunsborough, and after reading what I think was one too many GPT-written Facebook posts, I don't know if you guys are experiencing this, but I read things on my phone sometimes, and I think, is any of this written by a human anymore? So I thought I need to escape this nonsense. So I headed down to the op shop and had a look at the second-hand book section. And I thought I need to get something that I know for sure was written by a human. So I had a browse through and ended up with a bit of Shakespeare, and I found some Greek mythology as well, which I think's useful. So I delved into a bit of Greek mythology, which is a nice little bit of respite from some of the nonsense that comes through the phone sometimes. And I read the Greek story of Icarus. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar, most people will know this image. It's about the boy that flew too close to the sun, the wax melting and the fall. But what stuck with me in reading this and thinking about this debate today is not just the drama of it all, but it's the warning. He was warned by his father, not to fly. Well, he wasn't warned not to fly. He was warned that he needed to fly within limits. Ambition was fine, but he had to respect the reality of what was going on. So he said, fly carefully, not too high, not too low, respect the limits, understand the materials you're working with. The laws of nature don't bend because your intentions are good. Now, it's a story that's endured for thousands of years because it speaks to something about human judgment. Ambition is not the problem. Hubris is. And as we begin 2026, I think it's a lesson that matters for Western Australia, particularly with how the Cook government is managing the energy system. Western Australians overwhelmingly support lowering emissions, and they want cleaner energy, and we want innovation as well. And we want to leave our state stronger for future generations. We want to have industries that have reliable power. We want to have households, including those in Bullsbrook, that have reliable power. But we also want the lights to stay on. We want prices that households and businesses can afford, and we want a transition that is engineered properly and not announced prematurely. Well, I hope the Energy Minister, perhaps if she's down, has a chance to pop down to a second-hand bookshop sometime, brushes up on a Greek mythology too, because I think Icarus is a telling analogy for this one. It's all well and good to have ambitions and say fancy words and pump out all the talking points and do the Instagram reels, but if the engineering doesn't work, if the plan's not funded, then the lights aren't going to stay on. And you have the examples of that in Bullsbrook, where residents, everyday West Australians, are suffering the consequences of poor management from this government. Now, the Liberal position is clear. We support reliable and affordable and sustainable energy, but not at any cost. Not in a way that leaves families paying more and businesses wondering whether they need to invest elsewhere. Because the first job of the government is to keep the lights on. And as the honourable member mentioned in his opening remarks, the Premier has finally seemed to have grasped this as well in explaining their new investment in coal. The second thing is to ensure that energy is at a price that the community can actually afford. And the third is to be, of course, reducing emissions and being responsible from an environmental perspective. The Liberals, we remain committed to reducing emissions, but not at any cost, and not at the cost to reliability, because we know energy is so fundamental to the economy. And we need to keep an eye on household bills. And I hope in the government response, which I'm sure we'll hear soon, there's a lengthy contribution discussing affordability and their plans to lower costs, because we don't hear that anymore from the Labor Party. The Cook government is big on announcements. It loves to talk about the transition and renewable energy. But the truth is their ambitions are not being achieved in the way that they say, and the plan is in disarray. That's what we saw earlier this year with the delays and the investment in coal. It's a plan in disarray. Even the Premier is now admitting that they aren't going to close all the coal power that they said they would by 2029, as they had promised. And he said the reason is because it would lead to lights being switched off. The other thing I want to mention is that it's important that we have ministers saying things that are credible. And it's such an obvious point, but if we have the minister continually announcing plans that sound perfect, they hit all the talking points perfectly, hit all the sentiment perfectly, but if the outcomes are just consistently not there, you get to a point where this minister and this government, when it comes to energy, it becomes like elevator music. You know, it sounds good, but people just aren't going to pay any attention to it anymore. And if you can't bring the West Australian public with you, when we have to make the important investments and have to do the important things that we need to do for our energy system, then things just aren't going to work. You know, and this is the whole issue right now. Clearly, there are so many West Australians that are unhappy. They don't take an ideological take on these things. They view these things simply. And they're not angry for the sake of it. You know, they're just tired. They're tired of being told things that don't turn out to be true. And many of them feel like they're working harder but getting less in return under Labor. Across the suburbs and regional communities, among parents juggling mortgages, trying to pay bills and trying to deal with school fees and rising mortgages, they're asking themselves the question, are we really getting the best deal we could be under the current administration? And right now, for many West Australians, including those in Bullsbrook that I mentioned, the answer is no. There is a growing sense that the state is heading in the wrong direction, and this is not a fringe view, this has become a mainstream concern directed at this government. After 9 years of Labor, the cost pressures on families have eased. And not only is it getting worse, but people are losing hope, any hope that things can turn around under this government, because they've heard it all before. They've heard it for 9 years. They've seen all the reels and the videos and all the stuff they do, try and pump out their message. But then they get their Western Power bill or they get their Water Corp bill and they see once again things are going up, times are getting harder. And energy is at the heart of this. It underpins the whole economy. When prices are out of control, when energy isn't reliable and businesses have to price in high risk to manage with that, the cost ultimately lands on West Australians. So West Australians are asking a fair question. Is the government making it better or making it worse? There is a strong sentiment that hard work is no longer being rewarded. And that sentiment right now is cutting deep right across this state.
Members, the question is that the motion be agreed. I give the call to the Honourable Jackie Jarvis.
Thank you, Acting President. I hate to break the news to the Honourable Steve Thomas. We will not be supporting your motion. I know, it's devastating. But look, what an enlightening contribution there from the Honourable Anthony Spagnolo. I mean, nothing says every man more than a holiday in Dunsborough and a bit of Greek mythology. I hope you shared those valuable life lessons with the good people of Bullsbrook. And I don't think I'm speaking out of school by saying I doubt very much that the Minister for Energy and Decarbonisation has time to wander through second-hand bookshops and ponder Greek mythology because she's too busy getting on with her job. And that job is an important... it's such good fun. And it's not even Thursday. I'm looking forward to... I'll be here again. I'm here all week. I'll be back again tomorrow, fighting the good fight. So, of course, this government does indeed recognise that renewable energy is the cheapest form of energy generation. And this isn't just about an ideology. It's fact. It's the economic reality of the modern energy market. Over recent years, we've seen fuel prices increase. We've seen international volatility and supply pressures